Hey Waffle Gang, I do hope you are well. My name is Mark and today we're checking out some more Reddit stories, and if you do love a Reddit story, why not consider hitting that like, subscribe, maybe that notification bell too, and let's crack on with today's first story. Much love, guys. Now before we do get into today's first story, I just want to mention that my voice is a bit rough at the moment. I had several comments in yesterday's video going, oh, your voice is a bit deep today. Well, I got a bit carried away at the football the other day and I lost my voice completely, but it's slowly coming back. Anyway, our first story is from Sienna the Witch from the Bridezilla's subreddit and says, bride won't give me wedding location. I am a wedding photographer and I've currently come across my first wedding that I'm considering cancelling. I booked the wedding several months ago in February and we talked on the phone once then. They said that they had a general idea that they wanted to film in, but not an exact location. I said that would be fine if they kept me up to date. They also never gave me an exact time. I messaged them throughout the coming months and never got replies or updates. I contacted them again on the 10th of June. The wedding is on the 30th and still no reply. So I contacted another vendor they are working with. According to that vendor, they have completely changed plans, moving the wedding to a location 3 hours away at 5 a.m. and with a 2-mile hike to the location. I've had no confirmation from the wedding party. The other vendor also said that the plans were not firm and subject to change. I was never able to get them to sign a contract stating the deliverables or the price, but they did pay me in advance. Would I be overreacting to cancel the wedding plans last minute? The wedding is 5 days from now. I didn't want to cancel, but now I feel I have no choice. What if I drive 3 hours to find that they changed locations yet again? I would at least partially refund them, if not fully refund them. But any advice? The fact that you've contacted them multiple times in this and they've ignored you again and again, you run a business. A reply text message from them takes a couple of minutes. Sure, wedding planning is stressful and people forget things, but the fact that you've done it multiple times, it seems like it's a bit more than that at this moment in time. Part of me says give them the ultimatum saying, look, you're going to cancel your part in it if they don't reply to your text message. A part of me is saying just be done with it because of this whole drama to begin with. You shouldn't have been left in this position. And the fact that they're changing such huge details without telling you, moving the wedding to a location 3 hours away, a 6-hour round trip for you, a potential 2-mile hike, depending on what photography equipment is needed. I've seen photographers with just a couple of cameras. I've also seen photographers with a full studio setup. But in the comments, Dinah Felice says, given my multiple attempts to contact you and the fact that I still have not received a location or any of the other information, I would need to lock down my travel arrangements, and we are less than a week out, I'm forced to treat this as a de facto cancellation. You'll be given a refund of XYZ dollars, the original payment minus the deposit. You have my sincere best wishes on your future plans, and if you are still getting married, congratulations. Under no circumstances should you consider going to a venue that you were told about by a third party, nor should you give them a full refund since they prevented you from making alternative plans. Even if they were to reach out now, I would strongly discourage you from photographing this wedding without a clear contract in place to set expectations and ensure you're on the same page. There's a high likelihood that they will blame any and all problems on you, even those resulting from their lack of communication or poor planning. And even if they don't do that, can you imagine continuing to deal with their flakiness when trying to deliver the finalized pictures? OP says, I think this is what I will do. Thank you for the detailed response. I like that you mentioned travel arrangements as well, because on our initial phone call, they mentioned something about a ferry ride through the park. They haven't provided any more detail on that either. Like, should I have bought myself a ticket? Would they provide one for me? Is it still even happening, etc.? The other vendor gave me a very sketchy timeline of events, stating that the 2-mile hikes was timestamped for 10 minutes. So I'm sure you're right, but if we didn't get up the hike on time, they would blame it all on me. Me Better says, I'm extremely invested now and I'd love to hear any updates about this situation. It's super weird to be honest, and I'm so curious about this dumpster fire. I'd definitely cancel though, and always get a contract signed to cover yourself in the future. OP says, I was way too forgiving about the contract thing. I sent it to them several times and just figured they were busy with other wedding plans, so that's why I put off cancelling for so long. I was just way too accommodating. I posted 2 updates by the way. So, Opie comes in a few hours later and says update. I just sent the bride a text. She never gave me her email and refunded through Venmo. I'm sad to see the money go, but relieved to not be a part of this fiasco anymore. Here's the message I sent the bride. Hi bride, given my multiple attempts to contact you and the fact that I have not received crucial information about your wedding, including the exact location, time and schedule, and we're less than a week out from your wedding date, I unfortunately have to treat this as a de facto cancellation. I've been in contact with your photographer and the information that they have provided me on the wedding does not match what we discussed over the phone. I've contacted you several times asking for more detail and I've been met with no response. With the lack of information and communication, I cannot safely perform my job. I cannot be sure that the information that I have is accurate and so I can no longer attend. I'll be sending you a full refund since this cancellation is so last minute and I wish you the best. Thanks, OP. Thanks to everyone for the advice. If she ever replies to me, I'll post another update. So, 1 hour later, Opie says update 2. She immediately called me. Funny, since she's never replied this quickly before and left me a voicemail apologizing and begging for me to reconsider. She said she still hasn't finalized the location but is asking her other vendor tonight. I guess the other vendor is also the wedding planner and has planned everything, sort of. They offered me more money and to call to explain everything over the phone. They also said they didn't respond to my messages because they've been out of the country. So I gave them a detailed list of everything I would need if I were to reconsider them as a client and said that if we verbally agreed, they would have to sign a contract or I would not show up. I also want them to accommodate me for travel fees. So if they can call me back by 5 PM today with all the details I asked for and an increased payment plan, I'm going to reconsider taking the job. I still want the money and the experience, so if they can accommodate me, I'll do what I can. Steve Bow is the top comment on this one who says, so over in the home improvement sub, they always talk about something called the FU price. It's basically when a contractor charges an insane price because they don't want the job. I suggest you charge an FU price on this one. OP says we'll definitely be doing this. A day later, another update. Update 3. They doubled the amount and paid for a hotel near the venue. I'm morbidly curious to see how this whole thing turns out, so I'm going. I sent them a contract that says if I can't find them out there, I'm leaving and keeping the payment. Also told them that if they don't sign the contract by the day before the wedding, I'm not going and I'm not giving back any of the money, which they've already given me. The wedding is taking place by a lake near the hiking trail. They insist we won't be hiking the full 45-minute trail. Also work that into the contract. If they make me hike more than 20 minutes with all my stuff, I'm stopping right there. There's going to be a ferry ride across the lake after the ceremony. Also looked into their other photographer/wedding planner, and they've been plagiarizing all of the work on their website. The photos they show are all Squarespace default photos and photos from other copyright-free websites. So I won't be surprised if they're completely scammed and I get to leave anyway. But anyway, I think my butt is covered now. I'll give updates after the wedding. So the comments were all just like, what the hell's going on here? They can't wait to see an update, etc, etc. 5 days later, OP comes in with what they title their final, hopefully, update and says, final, hopefully, update. As a gesture of goodwill, they booked me a hotel. When I looked up directions to the hotel, it was in a town 4 hours away from the venue. They clearly had no idea where anything was in relation to their venue. So obviously, I didn't stay there. All the hotels that were near their venue were booked, so I ended up driving out to the venue at 2 AM to get to the wedding at 5 AM. I was the first person there. The sun was already rising by the way. Actually, the sun rises at around 3:45. They wanted a sunrise wedding, but I guess they didn't actually look up what time the sun rises here and just assumed 5 AM. The wedding party arrived at 5:30. We couldn't do anything until the wedding planner/photographer arrived because no one knew where the actual ceremony was supposed to take place. The planner arrived at 5:45. The ceremony was actually really beautiful. It's too bad the planner stood in front of my tripod the entire time. I got footage on my handheld, but it would have been nice to have usable tripod footage. The planner also turned off the mic I'd placed to capture the vows. I don't know why she thought she could touch my stuff without permission, but that was super cool. Also, weird thing, she kept taking pictures of her feet, like constantly. I'd be working and she'd be taking another foot pic. I don't know, man. The bride and groom asked me to follow them to another location for a ferry ride. They told me it would be a 10-minute drive. It was an hour drive. I was well within my rights to turn around and quit now that I had my contract, but I was feeling nice and figured the more time driving, the less time actually spending with these people. We arrive at the ferry, which was actually just a little tour boat, and the wedding party was astonished to find that they were supposed to make a reservation. The wedding planner had told them not to worry about it, but the boat needed to be reserved weeks in advance. So we ended up going on a hike in the area. It started pouring rain and flooding the trail, but the bride and groom kept their wedding clothes on, even through all the mud and water. There was a waterfall at the end of the trail that they tried to climb up. I didn't want to die, so I declined to climb the slippery rocks next to the cliff with tumbling rapids. I turned around and drove the 3 to 4 hours home and crashed for about 24 hours. Hopefully they got home safely too. Sorry for not updating sooner. I was horribly exhausted. The wedding was not as bad as I thought, but if they hadn't paid me more, I wouldn't have gone. The couple was really nice, just horrible communicators and with bad judgment on trusting this photographer/wedding planner. The planner was the true villain in my opinion. What an absolute shit show. I'm glad OP did attend the wedding in the end. Otherwise we wouldn't get this story, but I can't help but feel a bit sorry for the couple. I know they should have done better themselves, etc. You know, OP got paid in the end. OP done what they did and got themselves out of there. They got a story to tell from it at the same time. But this couple just had a nightmare of a wedding by the sounds of it. And I agree that the planner was the villain of the story. In my mind, I had this, I don't know if you've heard of it, but like the Willy Wonka Glasgow experience. That was a bit of a meme a few months back. Basically, everyone was promised this big Willy Wonka experience in Glasgow. Everyone was paying tickets, pre-booking, etc. There was a website. Everything looked legit. They turned up and it was like a massive empty hall with like a bouncy castle in the corner. Someone giving out like a sweet each to the kids. It was just like an awful experience. And the staff that were there were horribly embarrassed at the same time as well. There's a lot of memes, look it up on Google or YouTube, whatever. But that's all I could picture in my head whilst he was going through this story, that sort of level of planning, you know. And yes, I know that the couple should have been planning better, etc., etc. But there's a part of me that feels sorry for them at the same time. Can I also say, a 5 a.m. wedding? Holy moly, my body doesn't start moving till at least 8 a.m. And let's not forget about the planner taking pictures of her own feet for the whole wedding. What was that about? Unplugging the sound from the vows? What was going on there? But now, I'm going to turn this one to you guys. What do you guys make of this situation? Let us know your thoughts down in the comments below. And let's move on to another story. Now, our next story comes from Eyes and Pies from the True Off My Chest subreddit and says, my dad found his biological parents, and it turns out they've been searching for him for 56 years. I'm not sure this is the place to post this, but I just wanted to get my excitement out somewhere. So I figured that counts as getting off my chest. Shout out to r/, who helped me discover this subreddit. As you would expect from the title, my dad, male 56, was adopted at birth. He was raised in Eastern Canada and never really searched for his birth parents. The people who raised him are parents to him, and he loves them very much. They've always been amazing grandparents to my sister, female 19, and I, male 22. All he had from his birth parents was a letter which told him he was born out of love, but they could not support him when he was born. So when my sister decided to get him a genetic test for Christmas, it was purely with the intention to find out what ethnicity we all are, and the thought of finding his birth parents didn't even cross our minds. Eventually, when we got his results, we were surprised to find names of 2 people with perfect genetic matches to my dad. He had the option to reach out to them, so he wrote them each an email and just waited for their responses. Almost immediately, his biological dad, who I'll call Jim, not his real name, responded. He said how excited and happy he was to have found my dad and how he was looking for him for so long. My dad, who is usually an emotionally reserved man, was curled up on the couch, grinning as he was texting Jim for the first time. I was still in shock from the news, but was so happy to see my dad, even happier than when I graduated uni. Soon thereafter, he also received a message from his biological mum, Debbie, not her real name. By talking to them both, my dad learned the story of his birth, and I think that it's absolutely wild. Debbie is a daughter of an Australian mining engineer, and they all moved to Canada for his work when she was in high school. Later on, they moved to the Midwest where she met Jim at the age of 17. They were high school sweethearts and were thinking of marriage after they graduated, but then Debbie got pregnant. This being the 60s, this was a huge deal. Her dad was furious and sent her back to Canada to give birth and arranged a private adoption, as he knew a couple who were trying to have a kid, my grandparents. Once she gave birth, she was able to let Jim know that she was being sent back to Australia. They never saw each other again for the next 40 years. Jim apparently was only able to move on once he received a letter over 5 years later from Debbie, saying that she got married. Eventually, he got married too, and they moved to the West Coast, but his wife got in a terrible car crash and lost the use of both legs and one arm, so they were never able to have kids. Debbie had 3 daughters in Australia, the oldest of which is 7 years younger than my dad. They saw each other for the first time around 12 years ago, as they reconnected on Facebook, and Debbie happened to be taking a trip to the west coast of America. Both Jim and Debbie had always wanted to keep my dad, and so they tried for decades to find him. But my province apparently is one of the hardest places in the world to find adoption information, especially since my dad only received his birth certificate at his baptism, so their names were not on it. Jim had essentially given up trying to find my dad until genetic tests became popular. He asked Debbie to take every single one, and he did the same about 5 years ago, in the hopes that one day my dad would take one. When he received my dad's message, he immediately wrote to Debbie, "I found him." Since then, we've received several calls with Jim and his wife, and they're absolutely lovely. We are the only family since they don't have kids, and I couldn't be happier. At the end of the month, we'll be flying to the West Coast to meet them. It's been harder to talk to Debbie as Australia is so many hours ahead of us, but she is also kind and an absolute joy to talk to. I haven't met my 3 new aunts yet, but apparently one lives in London. It's crazy to think that I might have been within a few kilometers of her the few times I've visited. I also have 5 new younger cousins. A couple of them are huge fans of Japanese culture, so they're ecstatic to hear that they have a half Japanese cousins. My mum is Japanese Canadian, so my sister and I are both half. We hope to visit them one day in Australia, but we might all meet up in Japan next year. I don't know how to end this. I'm still processing everything. It's absolutely incredible to have my family grow so much, but also a little overwhelming. I'm so happy for my dad, for Jim, and for Debbie, and I'm so excited to get to know them better. I hope to get to meet my new cousins soon too. I feel so incredibly lucky that this happened, seemingly against all odds. My dad was initially raised francophone, so it's a miracle that they even speak the same language. Anyways, thank you so much for taking the time to read through this, and my apologies for how long this post ended up being. I might post an update after I meet Jim and his wife. Hope you all have a wonderful day. Sponge Jake says to this one, "That visual of your dad curled up on the couch, grinning as he texts Jim brought tears. Congratulations to you, your dad, your family, and your new extended family. Such joyful news." Opie says thank you so much. I might have been crying a little bit while typing this out. So Opie came in with her update and said, "First of all, thank you so much to everyone who left such kind and heartfelt comments on my first post. It's incredible hearing all of your stories. For those who were concerned that we would abandon my grandparents that I grew up with, that is most definitely not the case. They were the people I grew up with and I absolutely love them to bits, although only my grandmother is still with us. All the incredible times I've had with her growing up are so much more important than blood, and I can't comprehend the stories I read where people forget about their adoptive parents or grandparents when they find their biological ones. I won't recap my previous post here because I'm lazy. So we just got back from visiting Jim and his wife, who I'll call Mary, not her real name, on the West Coast, and it was one of the best experiences of my life. We spent a week in their city and got to experience so much with them. Our first time meeting them in person was very emotional and felt very surreal. We spent the whole day looking through my dad and our old photos, basically catching Jim up on everything that he's missed over the past 56 years. We also got to see so many of his and Mary's old photos too, which was very cool. We went to a park near their house, and on the walk I heard Jim whisper, "My son," with a massive smile across his face. Throughout the week we explored their city and saw so many cool sights and tried so much delicious food. Mary knows her city so well, and it was great to see her favourite spots all around the city, and from food carts to gardens to museums. We all went to an incredible Japanese American museum, and Jim and Mary absolutely loved it. They were very keen to learn about the internment during World War II and said they knew a bit about it before, but now it feels so personal. We went on 2 hikes with Jim. Mary wasn't able to come because she's in a wheelchair. It's so cool to have such an active and outdoorsy grandfather who was able to go on such long hikes. He taught us some foraging tips and told us stories from when he used to camp for years on end. Both he and Mary are very spiritual, so he told us great stories from meditation retreats they've done. He's even tried psychedelics, so he's definitely the cool grandpa. I won't go into precise details of places we went, but it was great exploring such a cool part of the world with amazing people. We're all very sad when the trip was over and we had to leave. I gained 2 new grandparents on this west coast and I couldn't be happier. And they said they've gained 2 grandchildren. I'm so glad they see us as such. Mary told me her greatest regret in life was not being able to have children and grandchildren, but now she does. This has been such a transformative time in our lives, and I think it's incredible just how many people are so much happier now because my sister just happened to get my dad a DNA test. This is just the beginning of our relationship with our new grandparents, and I'm so excited. Now we have to figure out a way to go to Australia to meet Debbie. Whenever that happens, maybe I'll make another update. Until then, hope you have a lovely day, and thank you so much for taking the time to read our story. I wonder how many relationships sort of get rekindled or rebuilt because of DNA these days. I know we've covered a lot of stories in the past where things have gone horribly. Like OP said, there's been stories we've covered where they forgot about the people that brought them up in place of the biological parents, and it was incredibly sad to see, and I'm glad it's not the case in this story, and it's just a beautiful story of a bunch of people coming together, and it just sounded wonderful all around to me, and it's just so nice to see. But what do you guys make of this situation? Have you ever done your own DNA test? Was there anything surprising for you? Let us know your thoughts down in the comments below. Just a huge thank you from the bottom of my heart for getting involved in today's stories. Your love, your support, your time always means the absolute world to me. So thank you so much, and hopefully I'll see you in the next one. Take care and much love.